All right, what is going on? Tom back here with another solo episode. And today I want to talk about copywriting. It's a skill that I never really hear mortgage brokers or loan officers talk about. Not sure why. I think it's a really important skill. There's a lot of different things we do in our business that if you learn this skill, it can really apply to many different facets in your biz. So that's what I want to talk about here today. It's something that I've been doing more of a deep dive on. And some of this is inspiration that I found through a podcast called My First Million. It's kind of the same format that Brandon and I do here. It's two buddies, only they're much more successful than us. I think they've exited 100 mil businesses, maybe even more than that. I don't even know. But, anyways, they had an episode all about copywriting, and a lot of it is similar to what I've been learning and some of the frameworks I'm going to talk about here today in this episode. And of course, everything that's worked for me in my business, even in our past business, which I'm going to touch on here too is what I'm going to talk about. So, quick side note, we are still going to be doing dual episodes. I know we've been doing solos for the past month or so. It's just been working really well with our schedules. And, as we're in spring market, starting up Tango, we've talked about this before. We're just busier and busier. So, the solos have been working really well for us. I hope you guys have been enjoying it as well. I think there's a time and place for each style, the solos and the duals. And the solos are really to the point, like tip one, two, three, like we dive right into it and give you the facts. And I think it's great in that perspective, but also maybe you enjoy the conversation between Brandon and I. So we're going to keep both formats for sure. We're going to see some more duels coming out in the near future. So if you are more so in the dual camp, I know I'm calling them duels. I'm just talking about me and Brandon doing a podcast together. Then rest assured, we will have some more episodes in the near future. And as always, I appreciate all of your feedback that you guys have for us when you reach out over Instagram and email. We love it. Please keep it coming. So, with all that being said, let's dive into the frameworks of copywriting. So, actually, before we go there, let's talk about why we want to use it. To me, copywriting, I talked about it in the intro to this video. It's really just a way to persuade someone into doing something that you want them to do. I know it sounds horrible, but it really is. If you think about it, if you're sending out, say, a database email, by the way, this is a great opportunity to variable rate clients that have a, say, prime minus 0.2 or 3, and you're trying to get that business because you're offering them maybe this crazy rate discount that you have, or even like the variable rate discounts that you have right now without like the special offers, you can win some business over there. And how you craft that email is going to determine the success you're going to have in drumming up business through that email. So, copywriting, in my opinion, is one of the most important skills. And it's not just about writing it out. Like, I've had many different benefits from going through copywriting trainings on YouTube or just practicing it myself over the years. And I could see it translate to other things in my life and in my business. For example, if you go to my videos, say 2 or 3 years ago on YouTube, a lot of them are brutal. Like, they're cringy to watch, but I keep them up there just for reference. And you can see over the years, like, I'm by far no means an expert at video. Like, I'm not the best at all, but I would like to think that I've learned quite a bit over the years and I've gotten better. And I think some of that is in part due to copywriting because I now know how to structure opening up a podcast episode or a YouTube video. I don't start off by saying, "Hey, it's Tom here from Commission Breath. Thank you for joining in. I want to talk to you about this today." I have a hook in there. That's why a lot of our episodes have that intro. That intro that I have before we get into the episode is actually, I type that out. So I type out that episode in the language that I'm comfortable with. It's not like a formal style of language. I write it out as if I'm talking. So I'm kind of jumping into some of the tips here. So before I get there, let's just talk about some of the different areas in your business that you can use it. So for me, I use it in my emails to my database. I use it to my realtor emails every Friday. That's huge. I get a lot of practice doing that. I use it with my webinars. I use it for my landing pages. I use it for, like I said, the intros to the podcast. Like, there's so many different areas you can use it in your biz. That's why I'm talking about it here today in this episode. So to give you an example of a really effective way that I've used copywriting is with our past business, Leadvine. So as a reminder, Leadvine was an old company that Brandon and I started where we were helping mortgage brokers we were booking meetings with realtors for their business. So on autopilot, they would just see these meetings pop up in their calendar. They would go to the meeting, show up, present to the realtors. And we even taught them how to present and pitch to realtors. So it was a really full package done for you service. And the offer was amazing. I mean, how can you not say no to meetings on autopilot? But besides that, in order to get them into the door and have them talking to us. There was a lot of marketing in play there. And a lot of that came down to our landing page that we built. That was copywriting 101 on a landing page. And we also had emails. We also had the biggest one for us was kind of had like a little 4 slide pitch for mortgage brokers. And that was a really high converting slideshow that we did. And it was live with the person. So we met over Google Meet, and a lot of the lingo we had in there showing the math breakdown of why it made sense to purchase our service, which by the way wasn't cheap. It was $1,500 a month. So if I showed you the math, if I can tell you, hey, go learn this skill, this copywriting skill, maybe put in 2 to 3 hours of effort just to kind of learn the basics. If I told you to do that and you did that and you just upped your skill by 10x, and I mean, this is different than mortgage money, but just to give you an example of how much money we made from that, in 2 months, we onboarded 12 brokers and we generated $18,000 a month from those 12 brokers because we were charging $1,500 a month. Now, it was a lot of money. It was very hands on. That's kind of why we stopped doing lead vine. It wasn't really our thing, the done for you service. But that goes to show you copywriting can be very, very effective. And I would like to think that the slideshow that we built that converted the mortgage brokers to wanting our service was one of the main reasons why we were very effective in the first 2 months. So before you even start crafting out whatever it is you're working on, let's just use an email, for example. Before you even start building out that email, you want to have the end in mind because that's really going to set the framework of how you're going to craft the email. Because without the end in mind, you're kind of just all over the place and you can really see that when you write it out. So, what I do is let's just use a Realtor Friday email for an example. I want to know what the goal is and what I want the end result to be. Like some of the emails are just relationship building. Some of it is I actually want there to be a specific call to action at the end. And maybe it's for them to reach out to me or reply to the email, or maybe it's them to send over some leads. Whatever the call to action and the end in mind is, you want to have that top of mind as you're scripting out that email. So that's the first tip. The second tip is you want to tap into human emotions. And a lot of this is going to sound manipulative, but as long as you're doing it in a way that you are providing a service to someone and you know you're good at it. So, going back to a mortgage example, like if you're trying to tap into someone's emotions, you're doing it because you want to help them with their mortgage and you're good at it and you want them to have a great experience. That's how you can really justify what you're doing here. It's not like you're really just being manipulative with their emotions. You're trying to tap into it to catch their attention. So if you look at it, you have 7 or 8 different emotions. Like you have sad, happy, angry, curious, motivated, whatever that emotion is, tie that to the end in mind. So if your goal is to get a reply back from the realtor in that email, as an example, then maybe it's something that you want to shock them with, like, oh my God, I didn't know that. Like, I need to know more about that. So you have like shock and curiosity in this email. To give you a real example of that, last week I sent out, it was an email and a broadcast message in my Instagram broadcast channel. And it was all about the new guidelines for Purchase Plus improvement programs with one of our lenders in the channel. And it's really cool because now their new guideline allows a buyer to purchase a home that has 1 unit, but there's a potential for a second unit in the basement. Maybe it had a separate entrance, but it didn't have a kitchen and a bedroom, and maybe just was in rough shape or just didn't qualify as a separate unit. This lender allows you to buy it, qualify it based off of market rents, and then do the renovations through the Purchase Plus improvement program. And you can qualify at that. So you qualify for a higher amount. You have that person that comes in, helps you pay down the rent. You can just be more competitive because you're in that higher purchase price range because you can use the rent to offset the liabilities, the mortgage payment. So we sent this out over email and the broadcast channel, and we had a lot of traction with realtors coming back to us and asking questions because nobody else was talking about it. It drove a lot of curiosity. And also, a lot of them were interested because we spun it in a way we said, hey, if you have any buyers out there who are having a tough time with what their pre approval is, let us know because we can increase it through this type of program. So that had a lot of them reach out to us. So we had those emotions tapped into in that email and broadcast channel. So the third tip here is whenever you're starting out the email or social post, whatever it is, you want the first line to catch their attention. So we'll use a social media post as an example here because again, it's not just the actual script, it's how you say it. If we're doing a social media post on talking about how to get a lower rate prior to closing, so as a reminder, you can get a lower rate for a client. If rates drop, then you can send an email out to the lender and you can request that lower rate. Now, depending on the lender, you can do unlimited with some, you can maybe do it once, or you can do it none, or you won't have the ability to do it at all with some lenders. Now, that's underwriting. I'm not going to talk about here in the podcast, but just know that is kind of the general policy here in Canada, at least. So, whenever you want to do, like, let's say we're doing a video on that and we want to show people, hey, you can get a lower rate prior to closing, and here's how to do it. Instead of starting off by saying, did you know you can request a lower rate before closing on your home? Say you use that as a hook. That's a decent hook because it's creating curiosity and people love rates. So you're tapping into what people actually want and you're driving some curiosity. But a better hook would be, all right, I'm probably going to get a lot of hate from people in my industry, but I got to say it anyways. You need to be asking if there's a lower rate prior to closing on your purchase or renewal. So that would be a better example because people are gonna be like, oh, why is this guy gonna get some hate from people in his industry? Like what he's about to say is probably gonna be pretty juicy. So you're creating curiosity, it's kind of shock. And that would be a better hook, even though the first example would probably work as a hook. That one's an even better one. So when you're scripting this thing out, try to really spend some time on that 1 to 2 sentences of whatever you're doing there. And by the way, if you're enjoying this content, please give us that 5-star rating and review. That would help us out and it can help you out because it's going to give us access to more people to then come on the show and give us their tips and insider info on what's working in their business. So, tip number 4, this one I have really been trying to work on. One of the ways I've been practicing is actually through the podcast intros here. It's writing like you talk. So, let's just use the podcast intro as an example. Instead of writing it out formally, like how you normally would do for like an essay or an email or something that you're typically going to be more formal on. I write it out like with poor grammar. I start sentences with but or and. I capitalize things. Like if you actually looked at my intro, you'd be like, man, this guy is horrible with grammar. And it's for a reason because I want to sound natural. I want to sound like I'm talking and not just reading a script. Even if you know I'm reading a script, at least it sounds natural versus like robotic. That's a really great way to write engaging content, especially if you're scripting out your social posts. You don't want to do it in a way that sounds robotic. And by writing how you talk, that's going to defeat that robotic and formal style. So I would really give this a try. If you're a big on social media, start with your social posts. The only thing I would maybe say is try not to do too much of it in your emails. But with that being said, there is a happy medium. You don't want to be too formal in your emails, but you also don't want to write poor grammar. I would just maybe sound a bit more natural and human in your emails. And one way I found that was easy for me to accomplish this was picturing the camera. So I'm talking to the camera right now. I'm picturing a friend of mine and talking to one person. Whenever you're doing any content, you never want to reference you guys or all of you. I still tend to do it every now and then, but try to say you or you, the listener. Like you want to make it sound like it's 1 to 1. That's going to benefit the algorithm because people are going to feel like you're speaking to them. So they're going to listen or watch longer. And also from a perspective of helping you sound more natural, I always picture the camera as someone like a buddy of mine that I'm talking to. And it really just helps you get into that mindset of talking 1 to 1 to a buddy and not sound too formal. So this next tip, tip number 5 is the art of storytelling. So this one I'm not so great at. And I would say Brandon is a lot better at storytelling than I am. It's something I'm working on. And I'm more of like, I want to get straight to the point. Let's get to the cold, hard facts and give the goods. Whereas Brandon likes to have more stories and references around it, and that's what I'm trying to work on myself. Is I'm watching a lot more YouTube videos on it. I have a couple channels that I watch and follow where it's all about storytelling and how to get better at doing it. And it can really help improve anything you're working on, from social posts, email, anything copywriting perspective. Storytelling is absolutely huge. So I learned this framework from again, that podcast, My First Million. And the way they really structure their storytelling is they have their intention and their obstacle. So what's the intention behind that person in the story, and what's the obstacle they're facing? So this can be kind of hard to get your head wrapped around, like putting this into whatever goal you're trying to accomplish with your copywriting. It's not going to be like a cut and dry story, but maybe going back to that variable rate email, when you're tapping into those emotions, you're trying to paint a picture. So if we're using the variable rate email as a example, instead of doing that over email, let's just say it's a social post and you're trying to show people strategy on how to get a lower variable rate, break your mortgage, pay the penalty, you're still better off by showing the math and all that good stuff. You're going to have all of that in there still. And let's just say it's a YouTube video. Instead of just breaking down the math and showing them why they need to do this, have a story laid out of maybe a client that just did this or a client that was struggling with their variable rate and their payments were so high and you had the solution for them. That would be a good example of sprinkling in a story because then it's going to help you tap into those human emotions from the person that's either listening or watching. And that's something I'm really trying to work on. And the other thing is you want to show what's at stake. So to go back to that example of the variable rate client that had their payment rise up so much, maybe their home was the thing that was at stake. Maybe their payment got so high that they were maybe about to have to sell their home. So that could be a good example there. And it doesn't have to always be like this huge stake. It could be something smaller. That would be like an extreme example of that person having to sell their home, but it doesn't have to be that extreme. As long as something's in there, that's really just the general framework of storytelling. I wish I can really elaborate on this tip, but I'll be the first to say I'm not the best at this. It's just something that I'm working on and it's something that I know is super important. So what I will say is if you are like me and you're trying to improve that as well, go on YouTube. There's a couple of channels there. I don't know the names off the top of my head, but if you just type in how to get better at storytelling, you'll find some channels. And focusing on storytelling as a skill will definitely help you in your business. And tip number 6, subscribe to other content creators. I've done this in the mortgage space where I've subscribed to other mortgage brokers, newsletters, and just kind of was seeing what they were doing from a database marketing perspective. What I can say is a very small percentage do it well. So that's why I'm saying, like, think outside the box. Let's not just think about people in our industry. I've learned so much more through other content creators like Jay Klaus and the My First Million podcast. I've learned from these other people. I've subscribed to their newsletters. I've checked out their webinars. I've checked out their websites just for reference. Like, you'll learn a lot just by doing what these high performers are doing. And that's what I would say is go around, find these big creators who have really figured out the model and just observe what they're doing and do a deep dive on it. So, if I could sum up this episode, what I would recommend doing is just doing an overview of your business and seeing where copywriting falls into. And from there, that's where you can pick and choose what would be most effective for you to focus your efforts on. And this doesn't have to be like a 40-hour project. Like maybe put in 2 or 3 hours of research and learning and just watch some YouTube videos. Like keep it super simple. You'll learn a lot. And you don't have to do this during work hours. Like you can do this while you're doing chores around the home or if you're working out. Like just find the time, learn the skill because I'm telling you, it is worth it. And it's something that you can develop over time.